Hello, hello, lovelies. You are listening to the Love Life with Court show, and as always, I am your host, Courtney. If this is your first time tuning into the pod, well, welcome to the family, and if not, here is a warm welcome back. Today, we have Tina Hunyh, who is an entrepreneurial spirit that is turning the wellness world vibrant with her passion for holistic health and joy. She's not just an advocate for healthy eating and intuitive nourishment, she's a living testament to the power of balancing nutrition, food psychology, and the joyful rhythm of dance. Tina's approach to life is all about embracing the adventure, whether she's finding her center on the yoga mat or inspiring others through her dynamic wellness workshops. She believes that a strong body and a nourished soul are the secret ingredients to living life to the fullest. Welcome, Tina. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you, Courtney, for having me.
Of course. Of course. I'm very much looking forward to talking about intuitive eating today and kind of your journey that you've had with that. Before we begin, can you tell us just how your journey has looked so far to being a certified sound healer, positive and spiritual psychology coach, and mind-body eating coach? What has brought you to this point?
Yeah, so it's probably the same for everyone else, but all of the certifications and education that I've got, it's all been with the intention of healing myself. So
okay.
I went through lots of disordered eating. I had an eating disorder in my 20s. I never really had too much excess weight to lose. For me, the struggle was always in my mind. I had very strong binge and restrict and then binge cycles, obviously with binge eating disorder. And I struggled with the eating disorder for almost a decade, most of my 20s. And it's just been a healing journey ever since that, just certification after certification and just living through that whole experience. I know how dark and lonely of a journey it is. So now I just try to talk about it and try to make people maybe that are experiencing the same thing feel less alone. And now that I'm on the other side of it, to show people that you can survive it and you can get through it, and it is worth it to go through the healing process.
Of course. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Now, a big focus, I think, today will be intuitive eating, which I'm sure you've had a long journey of understanding how intuitive eating works for you and sharing how it can work for others. For the listeners who maybe are not aware of what intuitive eating is or is interested in starting that journey, can you explain what intuitive eating is?
So I like to say that it's essentially listening to your body and your mind all together. So it's learning your body signals. And when people have been dieting for too long, they start to lose sight of the body signals. So for a lot of people, starting intuitive eating is going to be to learn how to even pay attention to those signals. For example, the fullness signal. Like when you are used to binge eating, you don't feel full until you're, overly extended, right? And then it's like, okay, I'm good, I'm full. So for me, intuitive eating at the start was just like, how can I learn to be what 95% full is like, or 90% full? Like, how can I just not feel sick after eating?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the flip side of that, intuitive eating is also allowing yourself to eat when you're hungry. Because again, if you're used to dieting, you're trying to almost starve yourself or restrict the amount of calories that you feel that you need. And so it's learning that I don't have to eat low-fat everything. I am deserving of having calories. And so there's a lot of parts to intuitive eating. Your emotional triggers, basically things that make you want to eat more than usual. So just stuff that stresses you out, or habits that you've kind of built over time that you don't realize make you eat anymore. So it's just really, really paying attention to your body and what it's telling you and honoring that as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Now, what would you say are you've touched on it a little bit, but the guiding principles of intuitive eating? How did you start your journey of eating intuitively and understanding your body? What are the first steps that someone could take with that journey?
So you can actually Google it. There is a list of the 10 rules of intuitive eating, but the ones that are most important to me is number 1, eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. And then number two, there's no morality to food, meaning that food is neither good nor bad, just food is food. And that was a really important one for me to learn, because when I was giving food morality, like even the smallest bite of a chocolate chip cookie would set me off, because then like I had done something bad and like now I'm a bad person, and then you just go off the rails because you're a bad person, and then like you might as well just continue being a bad person, right? So that was like the big bad cycle. So no food morality, and then like you deserve to eat because you exist. And I think those are the most important rules.
I can definitely relate on that. And I think I'm still learning that part of my journey after losing such a large amount of weight. I was on a calorie deficit for so long that it looked the same for me. I was either on a calorie deficit all week from like Monday to Saturday, and then I'd allow Sunday to be my eat everything that is in the house, and it did not create a good balance for me because I looked at food as being good or bad. The low calorie, low fat foods were the good foods, and the Sunday foods were my bad foods. And right now I think I'm learning how to balance that. What would, I guess, the first step that you'd recommend someone take to either heal that pattern of, you know, looking at food as good or bad and stepping into more of like, this food has its purpose for me?
So that's a difficult one to answer, I think, because we have just been so ingrained with diet culture. It's just like so in us. And even me, after doing all of this work for so long, it's like I still kind of get those feelings sometimes, like, oh, like I still could lose weight, I still could be smaller, or I still, you know, could swap this for that instead. But I think at the end of the day, everyone just needs to slow down, like be present, like really be there when you're eating, and just ask why. Like, I think the answer to everything is just slow down and ask why. So like if you feel like something is bad, but you still want to eat it, just like, why? Is it really good? Does it taste good? Is that why you want to eat it? Like, that's a fine, perfectly fine reason to want to eat something. So then the next question is like, why is it bad? Did somebody tell you it's bad? Why did they tell you it was bad? What perhaps were they struggling with as well? And I think with like, I struggle with calorie counting because that kind of puts me into an all or nothing mindset. So I don't personally calorie count, but I think it is a very valuable tool for a lot of people, because it just shows you that like calories are just calories. Like you can fit in the cookie if you wanted to. And that it doesn't make it good nor bad just because you had some cookie, and it doesn't completely ruin your plan for the entire day just because you had a little bit of cookie, you know? So I think calorie counting is really valuable for that lesson if you don't struggle with like the all or nothing mindset like I do.
For sure. I feel you on that. Do you think a lot of that stems from like childhood and like parental influence and growing up?
Because we grew up with like Weight Watchers ads on TV, and like the points were everywhere. The points were labeled on bread products and stuff in the grocery store. And then I remember, I don't know how old I was, but it was probably preteen years, America's Next Top Model came out. And then I don't know if you watched it, but Tyra Banks would call like normal sized women plus sized. And it's like, that's the kind of environment that we grew up in. So I think it's just so ingrained in us. And I think the fashion era in that time was called heroin chic because it was so cool to be like very, very underweight. It's just something that's in us, and I think it takes a lot of deliberate work for us to undo it. And I think it's something that is going to be worth it for all of us, because like, just personally, because I struggled with my weight so much in my 20s, it was literally the only thing that I could care about because it was just so big in my mind. And I just think I have to grieve like the potential that I could have had in my 20s if I was able to just think about something else. But I was just stuck thinking about food and weight, and I could not do anything else. So could you imagine like the next generation of girls, of women that actually had the brain power to focus on something other than just their weight and their size? Like there's just so much potential for us to grow as a society if we could just ditch diet culture.
100%. I agree with you. So I recently heard a quote and it completely shifted how I look at like weight gain, because obviously it's normal for us to fluctuate in weight, because it's normal, especially with women, you know, whatever phase we are in our menstruation cycle and things like that. And the quote said that the weight gained living the life you love is the weight that's meant to be there. And obviously you know, you have to have a little bit of realistic perspective on there too, like, you know, balance, definitely. I've realized that I've spent so much of my life missing out on simple things of just going on an ice cream date with my husband, or, you know, going out for dinner with friends because it didn't fit in my calories that day, or I knew I'd be tempted. And now it's like, after losing a large amount of weight, I sometimes put weight on, and I immediately get that heart attack, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to gain it all back. But I'm starting to learn that this is the life that I love, because I deserve loving those little parts of life, right? And like you said, there's such a large portion of my life where you grieve that part of your life that you could have enjoyed if you weren't so hyper-focused on what food was going to do to your body, or what that environment would do for eating triggers. So thank you for sharing that. 100%. One question I have is, I'm sure you've seen, what are common obstacles that people face when starting their intuitive journey? Because obviously there will be some, but what are some things that you've seen, or maybe for yourself as well, that you had to go through?
I think the biggest struggle is going to be breaking habits that you already have. So, for example, if we just take a look at my binge eating, the habit developed because eating was calming my nervous system. So, like, whenever I would get frustrated, stressed out, or just feel some sort of anxiety, I would eat. And then that would calm me down. So the reward was there, right? Initially, eating did calm down my nervous system, but eventually it wouldn't anymore. Because maybe I'm starting to realize that now I'm eating too much and I don't want to eat it anymore, or just my body is just used to that and it's just not responding in the same way. But now I already have the habit of eating whenever I get stressed, even though the reward is no longer there. So every time I get stressed, I'm still going to eat, even though it doesn't calm down my frustrations anymore. So that's going to be the hardest thing to undo, because you've spent probably years building up this habit, right? And now all of a sudden you've decided you don't want it anymore. Well, now it's something that is operating in your subconscious. That goes back to my point in the beginning. Like, what you really have to do is just slow down and ask why. So the longer that you can pause between, you know, that itch and that craving and actually going through with the action, the more aware you are and the easier it will be to break the patterns. So for me in binge eating, like, as soon as I'm frustrated and I want to get the snacks, I'm like, okay, wait, I have to stop, I have to pause, I have to think about it. I'm like, okay, why am I frustrated? Or actually the question is probably, why do I want this snack? And it's like, oh, because I'm stressed out. Okay, why am I stressed out? And then, I don't know, something happened at work. I'm like, okay, so how can I deal with that in a healthy way that maybe doesn't involve overeating, and actually fix the problem instead of just masking the problem? I used food to mask my emotions, and I think it's very similar. And it's like, I honestly think it's very similar to alcoholism and like a bad drug habit, because like I was just literally numbing every time, every day, just for days and days on end, and just not ever dealing with the problem. And so you just have to kind of like snap yourself out of it. I think you have to come to that breaking point of like, okay, this is not working. I hate my life. It's not going in the direction that I wanted to. Like, you have to kind of hit that rock bottom. Well, I did. Like, if you can do it without hitting rock bottom, like, congrats. I love that for you.
Yes.
Yeah, but I had to hit my rock bottom. I had to realize like this is awful. It's not going the way that I wanted. And then you just kind of like slow down and just focus and just start asking why for everything.
I think with hitting that rock bottom too, everyone's is different. And, you know, when people ask, I'm sure you can relate, like, how do you maintain weight? Or how did you start your journey? It was like there was just a switch. Like one day it was just, I decided to stop with the bullshit that I have been allowing in my life for this long up until this point. And, you know, sometimes, like you said, I'll fall back myself into, I have to get back to restrictive dieting and I need to do this and that. And it no longer resonates with me. It's difficult for me to do now. And like you said, it all starts with finding those healthy replacement behaviors and recognizing like this has nothing to do with wanting to eat right now. This has everything to do with what's going on in my mind, right? And that mind and body balance. So for sure.
Like a pendulum swing. So like when we're starting the journey, we just swing back and forth the pendulum. And at first it's a very slow swing. So imagine like you're spending years doing these unhealthy habits. So you decide to change, then you swing the other way. And I think for most of us, we tend to go too much into the healthy stuff. And then you spend a couple of months there and then you burn out and then you swing back the other way. And now you're sitting in the unhealthy habits and you spend some time there and then you swing. And I think when you start out the journey of like learning how to be healthy and learning what works for you, I think we're constantly swinging back and forth. But as we get better at this journey, the time between the swings is less and like you can rebound faster. So even if you do have a couple of unhealthy meals that you didn't quite feel happy about, I think as you continue to practice, it becomes easier and easier for you to bounce back and to rebound. And so I just mentioned that because like if anyone's feeling discouraged, it's just all a part of the journey. It's all practice, and just the more that you continue to do it, the easier and easier that it gets.
I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm just on my swing. I got to swing back. I love that. That's a great metaphor.
Like kids, like when kids are learning, like they're always pushing boundaries, right? And so they have to like hit that maximum in order to understand what they're capable of. And they're like, okay, now I'm not going to go there. Like I'll step a little bit back. So we're always learning what we're capable of and pushing the line and then taking a couple steps back.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Now, what is the difference between intuitive eating? This one I was very curious about. Intuitive eating and mindful eating, if there is a difference.
I don't think there is really a difference. Intuitive eating is, I would say, the structure that has been created by these two authors. I don't remember their name. And they set off a couple of like the 10 rules of intuitive eating, and they've made it this whole mindful eating is very, very similar. I would say one thing that could be different is like mindful eating is just like focusing on being present with your food and eating it slowly. Like that's the kind of focus. Whereas intuitive eating could be like paying attention to your body and the hunger signals and stuff like that.
Okay.
And they're both pretty similar.
Yeah, that's from what I researched. I was like, okay, I have to ask Tina if there's any kind of difference. And what kind of signals can someone rely on when, like, I know we all know deep down when we're full, but for someone who, like you said, has always challenged that 100% or even more, being where like on a gauging of how full you are, what signals can someone start to look out for when they start doing intuitive eating?
So if you like to feel full, then you can also eat foods that are higher in water so that your stomach actually still feels full. So you want to eat more high volume food, like stuff with fiber as well can help you feel full. But I think for a lot of people, if you just slow down and eat very, very slowly, it's like this tiniest whisper of a feeling that your stomach is just like, I'm full. Like I could be good right now. And at that point, I think your stomach is maybe like 60-70% full. So you still could continue eating, especially if the food that you're eating is really good. Like I remember as I would be out at a restaurant and I would be eating and I could feel that like slight feeling of I'm full, but like the food is so good, so you just keep eating. So as the learning journey, it's just like try to slow down as much as possible so that you can feel that. And like I said, it's really hard for a lot of people to feel initially. So I think when we're born, our stomachs are around the size of our fist, like relative to our body. It can become stretched out if you overeat a lot all the time. But that's another thing that I try to visualize is like the food on my plate. Like if it just looks like it's enough to fill me, then I will just kind of assume that it's enough to fill me and I don't need to go back for seconds. So like if I try to fill my plate and put an amount that I think I will be satisfied with, and I'll just try to eat that. And if I'm still hungry afterwards, I will try to space out my meals. So like not go for seconds right away, but maybe drink a glass of water. And if in 15 minutes, if I'm still really feeling hungry, then I'll go back for seconds. But I guess that's one thing that I do is if I'm not able to feel it physically yet, then I will try to imagine it mentally with my eyes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good, putting it more into like a visualization as opposed to just relying on your body's instincts, right? And I think a big component of the intuitive eating, I don't know about you, but I grew up in a household that was you finish the food that's on your plate or you don't leave the table. And I think for a lot of us, that caused us to disconnect from our body and listening to those signals of, no, I'm full. Because sometimes I remember waiting, like I'd be like, I cannot eat anymore. And I'd have to wait there like 10 minutes and then I could finish what was on the plate, right? So for me, how I started healing from that was allowing myself purposely to leave like 2 or 3 bites on the plate always. Just to show that like, I don't need to finish that. If I'm hungry later, I could even leave the plate out and come back to it, but just actively practicing that really helped me with knowing that I don't need to eat what's on my plate. Because you fall into that, oh, it's only 3 more bites, just shove it in. But those 3 more bites were like, now your stomach's blowing up. Yeah, so you relate to that for sure.
I love that you mentioned that because I still struggle with that. Like I have to finish my plate. So now I just try to take less because I still have to finish my food.
Yeah. It's a progress with healing, right? Like you said, it's that swing. You go back and forth with it. Now, what is your take on, like the treat yourself mentality or allowing treat days? Like, how do you implement that in your life or avoid that in your life? Because like you said, with that good and bad foods, that's where that treat yourself mentality can start to come into play.
Yeah. So I don't believe in cheat meals or like treat days or anything like that. I just try to eat what I want when I want. And then it's really about controlling the portion size. However, I will say that when you are starting off, if you are coming from the binge eating background like me, like it's hard just to have, a quarter of a chocolate bar. That's like something that I never did. So initially it would be like, okay, 1 chocolate bar instead of 2. And then just like growing that way. And actually I can tell you a story because my trigger food used to be pepperoni sticks.
Okay.
And I just like, I love pepperoni sticks and I could just eat a whole bunch of them. And like, I just made them off limits. Like I told myself they were bad. So just one day I just decided like, it's not that bad, like whatever. I just bought a bag of pepperoni sticks and I was like, I'm just going to eat it until I feel sick and just like allow myself to eat it as much as I want, whenever I want, and see what happens. And so the first day I probably ate like, I don't know, 8-10 pepperoni sticks, which is kind of a lot. And then I felt sick and it was gross. And then the second day I had cravings. I wanted pepperoni sticks. I probably ate 5. And then the third day I wanted more, so I probably ate 3, and I just like allowed myself to eat it. And then after a week, like the craving was basically gone, and I didn't really. I don't think I ate them again for months.
Wow. So you broke that cycle of restricting and just was like, let's see how it goes.
It was just like something I wanted to do just to see what would happen, if anything bad would happen, if I just ate as much as I thought I wanted and just let it all go. And I was like, you know what? This is fine. It's not that bad. I got sick of it, and I taught myself that I don't need it anymore. And that was how I healed that one.
I was like that with ice cream. I was addicted to ice cream, and then when I started losing weight, I would allow myself one ice cream bar a day. Like that was just my treat at the end of the day. And I got, like, it was consistent. Like I had to have my ice cream bar every day. And then one day, it was very similar. One day I was like, you can have the whole box. Just eat, like, if you want the whole box, eat the whole box. And I think I probably ate almost the whole box. And it grossed me out so much because it had been something that I was having all the time that now, like, I can buy ice cream and it can sit in my fridge for weeks. And that was never, like, no way. Even if I didn't like the ice cream, I used to, if it was in there, I would eat it. So, yeah, like breaking that cycle. Yeah.
Twist in your head, because even though you're calorie counting and like you're doing great for yourself, like you're still kind of restricting yourself at one, right? So when you eat the one, you like, in your head, you're like, I want the second one. But like you didn't allow it. And so I think that's what intuitive eating is for me. Like the essence of that is just like truly allowing yourself whatever you want. And when you truly allow yourself to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, you just want less because you know it's always there. It's always there. It's always available. And like when things are plentiful, then you're not feeling starved. You're not feeling restricted. You're like, I can just have it at any time. So I'm full now. Like I could just eat more later. That's like the key to intuitive eating for me.
Exactly. I love that. Now, what is your take on, you've talked about it a little bit, well, mainly that's been a big focus, but what is your take on emotional eating and how can intuitive eating really support that? Because like we've said, it's allowing that, and you've talked on it, allowing yourself to have that, but then we can fall into, well, I'm eating intuitively and I'm emotional, but I'm eating intuitively, so I'll just eat it.
Yeah.
So you've said why, like taking a break and analyzing it, but do you have any other additional tips for someone who is heavily an emotional eater?
So intuitive eating, technically, I would say like you're supposed to stop eating when you're full. So if you're not able to stop eating when you're full, then you've switched from intuitive eating into emotional eating. Because like why does anyone need to eat if they're full? So when you're emotionally eating, then that goes back, so emotional eating is a habit. And habits are just subconscious and they're hard to break. And so you just have to figure out what is the trigger that is causing that emotional habit, what is the reward that you think you get from it, and how can you reward yourself in that same triggering scenario so that you get like a similar type of reward that is not food. Initially, when I was going through this process, it's really hard for me to not eat or really hard for me to stop eating. And so I would actually resort to distraction tactics just to get my mind off of it until I was in a better brain space to deal with the emotion that was causing the need for me to eat. So what that probably looks like is like going to the gym, walking, like expelling energy and getting rid of that emotion physically. So that's what I would really say, because at the end of the day, I really do believe that emotional eating is a habit that we've just like built into ourselves so strongly. And the work is just to figure out why that's there and to replace that habit with something that is more rewarding.
So really, I think what you're talking to about is like that dopamine seeking, right? Like finding stimulation. So maybe finding habits where it is even more rewarding and gives you more stimulation than whatever that food gives for comfort, right? That's a good way to put it.
But on the flip side of that, it's also like being able to sit with the uncomfortable feelings. And so like that's why we eat, or that's why we're seeking the dopamine maybe, is to actually not feel the uncomfortable feeling. So initially, like I said, when I'm not used to dealing with this kind of stuff, like I will maybe just scroll on Instagram or TikTok because that's an easy distraction. But you have to realize that that's still a distraction. And at the end of the day, in order for you to really heal this part of you, is like you just have to learn how to be uncomfortable. and like learn how to sit with those feelings. And so that's where the pause and the meditation comes in, because the longer that you can sit with that, like that is where the growth happens. Like I started off by distracting myself because I wasn't capable of pausing and dealing with the discomfort yet. And I think just the more time and space that I could create between the trigger and the reward, that is what allowed me to start to create the mental capacity to deal with uncomfortable emotions.
For sure. Yeah, I always say it's time to get comfortable with getting uncomfortable and embracing that, welcoming the emotions. Because I think too, for me, for a long time, I used food as a suppressor, just to suppress things. I didn't feel like talking about it, so I'd eat. I didn't want to work through it, so I'd eat, like you're talking about. And it wasn't until I started practicing self-love, practicing meditation, practicing moving my body and cherishing my body for what it had to offer, that I was able to also work through all those emotional components that were tied into that. Yeah. So
it's a journey.
Yeah, it is. And you like you said, that swing analogy, I just love that, because that's where I'm at right now. I initially lost about 95 pounds and I put on about 10 to 15 pounds. But I definitely wasn't healthy at my lowest weight. And now putting on weight, obviously I feel healthier than I've ever felt. But it's that journey of like the body dysmorphia, allowing myself to like embrace the body that I have now, loving my curves, like all of that, right? It's hard to not fall back into those old patterns of how you looked at yourself. And like you said, where you spend all of this time wasting your life, not valuing your body and what it has to offer, and instead just restricting it and putting it down. So yeah, it takes a lot of healing, like you said, and it never stops. And I love that you are always accumulating more knowledge and wanting to learn more, because we can never, the more we learn, for me, the more I realize I don't know. The more that I know, the less I know, because I just want to find out more about this topic or this subject. So I'm sure you can relate with that.
Oh yeah, the learning never stops.
No. And it's a great journey, because then you realize that a lot of people's stories, especially like interviewing you, we share a lot of similar perspectives on what our journey looked like, right? And without these kinds of platforms and learning, it can feel very lonely not knowing that there's a lot of people in the world that share similar experiences, even if you are completely different and live in different countries. Yeah. Now, how do you deal on this topic? How do you deal with like weight gain and body image issues after letting go of restrictions and food rules and embracing that intuitive part?
Honestly, I just blame my period.
Okay.
If I feel like particularly bloated and stuffy and gross, I'm like, it's probably my period and it's going to go away in a couple of days. So I just have to like keep on keeping on, and the feeling will pass. Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah, because like I feel like I don't do anything different, and I don't really eat really different foods or anything, but just like all of a sudden one day you're super bloated and you feel gross and nasty, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So it's my period. I'll just like take an easy day, relax, and tomorrow I'll feel better and I'll go to the gym and I'll be okay.
Yeah, having that short-term outlook on it, as opposed to like, this is where it all begins, this is the spiral. Instead, just being like, oh, it's just today. I like that, just sitting in like, it's just today, it's going to pass tomorrow, let it go kind of thing. Because as a woman, our weight, like, it never stops. Either like you're ovulating, but then you're a little bit bloated, but you feel good, so you have more energy. And then it comes to, it's a roller coaster.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Now, you touched on spending a lot of your 20s essentially not enjoying what life had to offer and focusing more on, what your body was doing and how you were eating. If you could go back to, the beginning of your 20s, what is something that you wish you would, or not wish, we can never go back, but something you could have told yourself or instilled upon yourself that maybe would have helped your journey?
No self-trust or self-faith or self-confidence or anything related to that. So I would probably tell myself that, like, you're okay and you're learning and that everyone else is learning. So just don't compare yourself to anyone else. Like, you're on your own journey and you're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Yeah, for sure. Not spiraling, just regulate.
Yeah.
And now, yeah, I like that. I think too, all of us, if we could just go back and like shake our old self, be like, you are good. Everything will work out. Just trust the process.
Yeah.
It's easier to embrace that part of your journey later on, right? Now, I know that you are also a mind and body eating coach, and you've answered all of my questions amazingly. Thank you very much for your time. Are there any mind and body practices before we close that you can leave us with, or any meditation practices that you can leave us with to help along our journey of eating intuitively, healing our mind and body? Yeah.
I think anytime you get outside, not really get outside, but get physical and into your body, that is a really great thing. So I like to go for walks as often as I can. Walks are a great form of exercise, especially for people that are starting off in their journey. Like, even walking can be difficult for some people. So I definitely encourage all types of walking. And as I'm walking, just to make it a little bit of a more mindful practice, I kind of imagine like the parts of my feet that are touching the ground as I take every single step, and just kind of like get into a rhythm of that and turn it into a little bit of a walking meditation. And then I also like to look up into the trees and the sky and just imagine how small I really am in the world, and how I feel like the main character in my movie, but like everyone is the main character in their own movies. And at the end of the day, although it feels incredibly significant, we are all very, very insignificant. So I just go outside for a walk and I tell myself none of this really matters, and just try to take a chill pill and be like, all right, well, if nothing matters, then nothing matters.
For sure. Yeah, I learned about that recently too. Like, we fall deep into our narrative, like what our narrative is about our story, and also what we think other people think our narrative is. Like, what is your perspective on me? What is your perspective on me? But at the end of the day, we are so minuscule. And, your work is so amazing. I'm sure you've touched a lot of people and helped them grow into, loving their body more, prioritizing their mind and body, and so forth. And yeah, I just think like platforms like this are so powerful to remind people that there are literally millions of people that are going through the same exact thing as you. You are no different. Yeah. And some may be like, well, no, I am different. But others, for me, like, I find it very grounding to know that my story is not really unique. There's so many people that go through this, and there are millions of people that have healed through this. So if they can do it, I can do it, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly why I keep talking about it, because when you're struggling with it and you feel that shame, it just feels so isolating and lonely. And so I try to talk about it because I feel like when I was going through this, I couldn't find other people talking about it. So I just want to put that out there, that like it's worth the journey, or worth healing. Yeah, the journey it just never stops, but it's all worth it. It's all worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your time with us. I really appreciate it. Is there anywhere that people can find you if they want to connect with you further, or, social media platforms? Obviously, I'll put it in the description, show notes as well. But if you want to, leave anything here, say anything, take the mic.
Well, traditionally I'm on Instagram a lot, but I have tried to take a pause from that. My Instagram's still there. It's still active. I'll probably come back to it one day. But right now I'm just on my own podcast, which is called Tina's Arena. And I upload that to wherever podcasts go and to YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So they can find you there. And is there anything else that you want to leave people with, or, last piece of advice from Tina?
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah, go for
it. What has been like the biggest mindset shift for you in terms of eating and on your personal journey?
I'm going to need a minute for that one. I think understanding that confidence is everything. Like, if I don't love myself and have true confidence for myself, all of this is pointless because I'm not doing it for the right reasons. And until I realize that, gaining a little bit of weight, but if I'm confident enough and I love myself enough, I know that it's nothing, and understanding that you can lose weight just as easily as you can gain weight. You have a whole life of worrying about stuff like that, and loving myself is more important than anything. And that's something that I'm still very much healing with and learning from, is that I just need to love me, because there's nobody. I want to get to the point in my life where nobody can love me better than I can. And because then I know that the people that are in my life, the people I surround myself with, they're there because I choose for them to be there, not because they love me more than myself, I think that's the biggest.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest one I've had, because it all roots down to that. Like you've said with, having self-confidence or self-awareness, and, when you were in the beginning of your 20s, it all roots down to that, is, do you love yourself? Because if you love yourself, it doesn't matter what you weigh. And honestly, too, if you love yourself, you're going to want to put your body first and your mind first. And even people just tuning into a podcast or watching a YouTube video, that's showing that you love yourself, because you want to learn more about how to heal yourself. And especially you, my gosh, I couldn't even say all the credentials you have in one sentence, one breath, because you can see that you're very passionate about healing yourself so that you can heal others, and offering value in your own life so that you can offer values to others. And I find a lot of motivation in practicing what I preach. Like, if I'm going to tell you to love yourself, well, I got to figure out how to love myself too, right?
I agree.
And if I'm telling you to let go of what numbers on the scale and just prioritize being healthy, then I have to let go of what's numbered on the scale and prioritize being healthy. So yeah. How about you? What was your biggest mindset change?
For me, it was to realize that it's not all or nothing. And every tiny bit counts, but at the same time, it doesn't count. So that paradox. So if I want to go for a 10-minute walk or a 5-minute walk, that, every tiny bit counts. And then at the same time, if I want to have a bite of cookie, it's not going to matter. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, I think too. And now you have me having all these ideas. The other big mindset one for me was make a goal so easy that it's absolutely ridiculous not to accomplish. And when I started looking at it like that, I have accomplished so much more than making these huge goals for myself. Like, when I started my weight loss journey, I so often was like, I need to lose 100 pounds. I need to lose 50 pounds. I need to lose 90 pounds, whatever it was. And it felt so out of touch that I would just give up so easily. But instead, I started with go outside for 5 minutes. That's it. Yeah. You don't need to even move your body. You just need to go outside for 5 minutes. And that was because that's the hardest part, is just showing up. And if you can show up, the rest is easy. Getting your gym clothes on and making your hair look nice before you go to the gym, that's the hardest part. Because the minute you get into the gym, you're going to feel absolutely amazing, right? So that was a big one for me, is just making a goal so ridiculously easy that it was like, okay, I can't not. And some days I would go and stand outside for 5 minutes, and that's all I had to give. But other
Yeah.
days I would get out there but I still checked that off going outside for 5 minutes, because I think when we make these big goals, it's so easy to be discouraged and just give up.
That's what I coach my clients to do. So those tiny little goals. So that's really good. Yeah. And then
Awesome.
your first point, you reminded me of something, and I'll close off with this. When you think of people that you love, and if you were to describe them to someone, you're never describing their weight, right? You're never going to say, "Oh, my mom, she was so skinny." Like, what? Is that the best quality about her? I don't know. So I just flip that back on yourself. Like, the people that love you, like, they're never ever concerned about your weight in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
like that.
that's just a good reminder for me to think about, like, that extra fluff that I think I have. Like, nobody actually cares except me.
No. If we went up to someone and were like, guess what I'm insecure about today, nobody would have any idea what it is. Something ridiculous that nobody can ever tell, right? Mm-hmm. No, thank you. Oh, that was so awesome. Thank you for joining today. I love the energy. I loved what you had to talk about. I'm sure I learned a lot. I'm sure the listeners have learned a lot. And thank you again so very much. Before we hop off, also to all the listeners, a friendly reminder to not only be kind to others, but also to your beautiful, amazing self.